Pushed aside, Dean fell. He saw how Nathaniel toppled to the ground, the smoking gun still clasped in his hand. Marius was just taking another pistol from Edward, together with some black stones the uncle was holding in his other hand. With fierce movements, Dean's supernatural friend crushed the stones and let the gun melt to a clump of steel. Seeing Melissa already kneeling next to the fallen cowboy, Dean scrambled to her side. Nathaniel lay on the ground, clutching his stomach. Beneath him, a small pool of blood already formed rapidly. "Nathaniel, no! You old fool!" he exclaimed, desperately trying to think of a cure. "I'm just a Confederate son. Don't you weep for me?" Nate looked at Melissa, whose tears wetted the ground. Trying to raise his trembling hand, the American gave up when his strength failed him. Instead, he tried to comfort them with words. "Those tears don't look good on a pretty girl like yourself. You always have to play the hero, don't you?" Dean joked, fighting to maintain a steady tone. Nathaniel tried to smile, but grimaced from the pain. "That's what cowboys do. Saving the day." Coughing and spitting blood, Nathaniel forced his lips to continue, for the color vanished quickly from his face, and Dean was certain the older man felt death close in on him. "You gave me back some of the humanity I lost with my family." In the end, his voice turned to a mere whisper, the eyes staring at the ceiling. "I can see a light." "You sure that's not hellfire?" Marius, no, Lucifer, joked. Anger rose inside Dean at first, but as he turned around, he stopped dead at the sincere, sorrowful expression the former angel wore. Barely conscious, Nathaniel's lips formed a smile at the attempted playful argument they did have so often in the past. But he spoke no more as his eyes grew glassy. Melissa suppressed a sob, and Dean felt how his own eyes became wet. He looked at the powerful entity next to him. Even the devil himself had a tearful luster in his eyes. After remaining silent for a few minutes, Dean got up and turned to the man sitting on the ground, sharing his surname. Edward was rocking back and forth, the face buried in his drawn-up knees. Someone else might have had pity with the man, might have believed him to be a child by the way he sat there, but not Dean. He knew the monster. Blind hatred seized his mind, demanding for him to act to escape the pain. Swiftly, Dean took Nathaniel's Colt and cocked it. He was just about to pull the trigger when Marius took his arm and pushed it down. Seeing the barrel face the ground, Dean grew even more furious. "He is pure evil. He deserves to burn for eternity," the young man said aloud, trying to free himself from the iron grip. "Dean, listen to me." Marius took the gun away and gripped him by his shoulders. "I know true evil. Believe me." Dean looked into his friend's eyes with his own, and he could see the shame once again. "Your uncle might not be a good man, but he is not evil. Do not let yourself be consumed by hatred. It won't end well," his friend said sympathetically, and as quickly as the wrath had come, as quickly it went away, leaving only grieving emptiness. Yet Dean wasn't ready to leave his uncle be. Feeling the attempt to assault the other man, Marius spoke again, the voice low and mourning but reasonable. "Remember what Nate said, what he would say now. Do you really want to kill a man? Your own family?" Unable to hold the tears back any longer, Dean turned away. Melissa was already behind him, giving him the much-needed, comforting embrace. Together they wept in silence, while their friend covered Nate's body with his red-brown coat. "Can you bring him back?" Dean managed to ask after finding his voice again. Standing motionless in front of the deceased, Marius spoke softly. "I am an angel. It should be in my power." There was longing in his voice, which made Dean aware of himself feeling the same. They both wanted their friend back. "Do it," Dean said, not comprehending why his friend hesitated. "No," came the stern answer. "Do it," Dean demanded again, desperate to change the devil's mind. "I am not God, Dean. I should never have strived for it. My creations are flawed. They almost endangered you. Hell, even God's creations are flawed. Don't let wrath and loss consume you like pride consumed me." "Is he in hell?" Dean suddenly asked, afraid to hear the answer. "Hell is a place for the truly wicked. Do you think he was wicked?" The young man shook his head in silence, not satisfied with the answer. "Nor do I." Merlice looked upwards, speaking with a heavy voice. "He's at peace now. He can finally rest. Don't take that from him." He touched the brim of his hat with thumb and index finger as if saluting some invisible friend. "My father always deemed self-sacrifice to be the clean slit. I still can't quite grasp why." Merlice smiled with melancholy for a short moment. Dean turned around, where his uncle was still rocking on the ground. What happened to him? He wondered out loud, being speechless at how fragile his uncle's mind had become. Cain must have influenced him. The more complex the mind, the greater the fall when it's broken. With an unspoken apology in his eyes, Merlice added, "I don't think he can survive in the daily world anymore. Manipulating a soul is never a good thing." "Can't you hear him?" Melissa asked, her eyes still red from the crying. The devil shook his head. "I can't hear a broken mind." Taking a deep breath, Merlice added, "I should go." "You're not staying?" Dean was a bit taken aback. He had thought their friend would not vanish the moment it was over. Cupiditas is a dangerous demon if let free. Besides, I've got a job to do." "You're going back to hell?" The young man couldn't hide the disbelief in his voice. "Being in heaven made me distant. Being in hell made me change. It gave me a second chance. Down there I can make a difference. Hell needs some severe changes. Souls not truly wicked can be redeemed, and when demons run wild, I will know." Dean felt tears well up in his eyes once again. Without warning, he embraced his friend. Lucifer showed nothing of the original distance from the beginning of their journey and returned the gesture. With his usual mischievous smile, he added, "Being just one floor below also ensures that I don't miss Christmas. The devil celebrating Jesus' birth? That would be quite a sight." Dean chuckled through the tears, looking genuinely happy the devil vanished without a trace. The next days were difficult for the young couple. Dean encased Nathaniel in ice to prevent the body from decaying before the burial. Mr. Heads was buried next to Aidan Calderwood in London. Dean said a few sentences for the old butler. He tried to honor Mr. Head's memory, yet he didn't have much to say, besides how well-liked, kind, and helpful the man had been. The two strange men who had fallen victim to the demon attack they reported at the police station. It turned out Mr. Heads had tried to get help for Edward, thinking the occultist was starting to lose his mind. Their respective loved ones, thankful for the closure, wept bitterly and even demanded Edward Calderwood to be sentenced to death, since the evidence was clearly pointing towards him. Dean's uncle was tried and declared insane. The last Dean and Melissa saw of the deranged, twisted man was him getting inside a car with men from the asylum. The two tried to make themselves at home in the mansion, but the memories of gruesome fates, dead friends, and missing loved ones led the both of them not sleep nor be at ease. After deciding to leave the past behind, they sold the estate and went to Melissa's family with their few belongings until they would find a nice spot in Ireland. With the seal broken, transporting things was no problem for the occultist. They also took with them the 4 horses Dean had picked up in Romania. With joy he learned how another child with the gift to wield magic had been born among the werewolves, and that Corian was going to teach it. They also took their deceased friend to Ireland, for they didn't want to leave him somewhere foreign where his grave would be abandoned by them. Melissa's family was overjoyed by the return of their daughter and sister. Having a farm, her father had enough room and use for the horses, and even Armand gained some trust towards humans, but not too much to be forced to do anything. Dean, on the other hand, had a hard time being accepted. Branded as an Englishman, the Irish were distanced at best. Only him being Melissa's husband prevented them from letting him disappear. At least that was how it felt to the young man. But with patience, empathy, and his humble behavior, the occultist soon managed to gain their acceptance and even love. All in all, he was happy working on the farm. It stopped his mind from dwelling on the past. Nathaniel was supposed to be buried at the graveyard nearby. Dean had never asked what kind of Christian Nathaniel had been, so he hoped a Catholic service would be fine enough. It was a cold, clear day when he and Melissa stood at the graveside. Melissa's family did not attend out of respect for the couple's privacy. Only they had known the older man. The priest, an old, benevolent-looking man, read the lines which would grant his soul's entrance to heaven as the coffin was lowered down and covered with dirt. His breath showing with each word in the frosty air, Dean spoke, trying to keep his voice from faltering. "You left us, Nathaniel. In the same way you came into our lives, out of nothing and wielding a gun. And now you lie down here, packed your things and left without a warning." Dean had to take a deep breath to keep going. A look at Melissa told him she struggled in the same way to maintain her composure. "I guess packing your things and leaving is how cowboys do it. I hope you don't mind if I care for your horse. He misses you each day." Dean smiled faintly when a memory of Nathaniel sitting proudly on his horse flashed behind his eyes. "May you wear a brilliant crown when you stand before the throne. You lie here now, far from home, but I don't think you would mind, for I know you are with your loved ones in heaven. Farewell, my friend." Tears felt hot on his cheeks when he gestured to the preacher the service was done. Thanking the man, they remained alone in front of the fresh grave for a while. Dean's hands started to feel numb, but he ignored it. He was afraid that if he left too early, something unnamed would slip out of his grasp forever. At the back of the graveyard, Dean suddenly saw a man wearing a large broad-brimmed hat and a black Inverness coat with a cape. Dean nudged Melissa, who followed his gaze. "It's Ankou," he whispered as the tall, skinny graveyard watcher walked in a phantom-like manner. In one hand he held his scythe, made of bone and steel. The long, loose, snow-white hair reached to the hips. For a moment, Ankou looked upwards into their direction, so they could see the light green eyes which were usually hidden. The entity seemed to feel their sadness, inclined his head as if to say that their friend is cared for, and moved on. As if to protect the dead, the first flakes of snow started to hit the ground, covering the graves with a pure, soft-looking blanket. "Look, Nathaniel, it's snowing." Dean breathed the words towards the sky. "Angels are weeping for you. An anchor protects your grave." Turning to Melissa, he said gently, "Come. Nate is safe here." The wedding occurred 2 days later. Family and friends of Melissa attended, bringing with them music and food. Dean enjoyed the festivities, although he would have liked Mary Elias to be part of both the funeral and the wedding. but the young man supposed the devil was busy in hell. Observing how happy everyone was, how happy he was, Dean felt how guilt sneaked itself into his mind. How could he feel joy when Nathaniel was dead because of him? His gaze swept over the guests and to his bride. He had never seen Melissa look so happy and so beautiful, and the warmth of the butterflies drove away the darkness of his conscience. Nate wouldn't want for them to blame themselves. A smile stole itself onto his face as he looked dreamily at the dancing crowd. Too late did he realize how a woman approached him and dragged him to his feet to dance. Melissa only laughed like an angel as he turned around, looking for help. A moment later she too was dancing with a man Dean knew to be family. He just could, by God, not remember his name. Too much had he had to learn the past days. It didn't take long for the cheerful Irish demeanor to infect the Englishman. Soon forgotten was the sorrow drowned in the waves of the joyful present. Time flew and quickly evening fell. Finally pronounced husband and wife, Dean and Melissa went home. Owning the inheritance of his father and Edward, Dean had no difficulty to find a nice spot for them. It was a small piece of land close to Melissa's family's farm. Using his magic, he built a small house. It was a plain building, but big enough for Dean's countless books. After months of struggle and adventure, they could finally be a family.